prepared, and intelligent. Some of the lessons to learn: the CDC did a fascinating report that it put out on May 1, which starts to take a deep look at what happened. And I think there's a lot of important information in that. And it pointed to something that we've been looking at here in New York. The report says that when they look at the different strains of the virus in the United States, that there are different strains. And we were all looking at the West Coast. The West Coast had cases well before the East Coast, remember, maybe 6 weeks before the East Coast. Those strains came from China. What we saw in the state of Washington, what we saw in California, they came from China. Flights from China land predominantly on the West Coast. What we have seen in New York didn't come from China, but actually is a different strain of the virus that came from Europe. That's an important fact to know and to study. They then said in the CDC report, from February, you had 139,000 travelers coming from Italy, 1.74 million from other European countries where the outbreak was spreading wildly and rapidly. So everybody's looking at China. Meanwhile, the virus had traveled from China to Europe, was in Europe, spreading from Europe. We had European travelers coming. They come to the East Coast. They land in New York, they go to New Jersey, they go to Connecticut, they're in the New York area, and we're all still looking at China. We were looking at China, and the travel ban on China may have been helpful, but the horse was already out of the barn in China. The virus had left. The virus was in Europe. And meanwhile, we have European travelers coming here, and they're bringing the virus, which is now a different strain of the virus, to the East Coast. This is from that CDC report. The deputy director, principal deputy director, delaying travel bans allowed for the virus to spread throughout the United States and contributed to the initiation and acceleration of domestic COVID cases in March. Extensive travel from Europe, once Europe was having outbreaks, really accelerated our importation and the rapid spread. The timing of our travel alerts should have been earlier. That is a very important fact and something we have to learn from. Person from the Grossman School of Medicine, knowing the number of flights coming into New York from Italy, it was like watching a horrible train wreck in slow motion. Nobody was watching Italy and Europe at the time. Nobody was even thinking about it. Today we must consider an outbreak anywhere is an outbreak everywhere. A.J. Parkinson. And I think those are words to remember going forward. Outbreak in China. In a number of days it's going to be in Europe. From Europe it's going to come to the United States, assuming it didn't come from the United States immediately from China. Another lesson we have to learn is our hospital system. You know, we talk about our hospital